on the fort. This is my new home, my community, right? You got your friends, you got. So I get settled in. I get my first vehicle. I got my license actually when I was 19. Bought my first vehicle on my own, everything on my own. Actually borrowed a fellow soldier's car to take the driver's license test. He already had a car. And then, yeah, got my license, got my own car, and got my first speeding ticket soon after. I think I got 3 speeding tickets within those first few years being a soldier. It's just, yeah, just living life really fast, you know? And we were young. So what happened next? We already knew we were going to war, okay? I kind of skipped past this. Back in basic training when we graduated, I remember we had Sam Elliott, I think, was the guest speaker, some celebrity. It was a big deal because it was the first year they were opening the Infantry Museum or whatever, and they brought him in. And I remember them saying to the parents, this is kind of trippy to hear the parents go through this, but we already knew. But they said, moms and dads, all of your children will be going overseas within the next year. Or 80%, 90% of your children graduating here today will be going overseas. So we already knew what was going on. But we get to Fort Stewart and we relax for a minute. We train hard every day. You never stop training. You get the weekends off. The military, the government's actually really nice for holidays and weekends. You know, they give you time off. But when you're on the job, you are on the job. Like, it's no joke. Wake up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. PT, physical training, all morning long. Go home and shower real quick. Eat breakfast if you got time. Come back and then train. Go to the range or go learn this course this day or do something. You're always doing something, which is so good. Like, to stay busy like that is so good for anyone, especially young people that need structure. So we had enough time to settle in, fail at finding a girlfriend, like always, and but had fun. You know, we had a lot of fun on the weekends going down to Savannah, which was a hot spot down there. I guess I'll tell the story about what was it? Daytona Beach. I'll tell the Daytona Beach story. Fort Stewart, Georgia is only, I think, 2 hours or an hour and a half away from the Florida state line. So once we learned that, we were like, let's go to Florida this weekend, right? And we just went for it. So we're driving down to Florida, and we passed Jacksonville. We passed a couple beaches, and we just kept driving. And then we saw Daytona, and we were like, yes, let's go there. So this is the first time ever. And this became like a ritual for us. We used to go all the time. This is the first time we ever went to Daytona Beach, and this is what happened. We get down there. Oh, man, all these other stories are coming to mind. Maybe I'll tell another one about Savannah after this. We get down there, and it's packed. It's super packed, and I forget what time of year it was, but it wasn't a holiday, right? So we're like talking, and we're like, why is it so packed? Like, is this how it always is? I don't know, but we're looking for parking, and it took like a half hour just to find a place to park. And then I remember we went into a store, and we asked someone who worked there, like, what is going on down here? Is there some kind of event or something? And I remember, I'll never forget, the guy said, it's the National College Cheerleading Competition. And then after that, the rest of the weekend, it's a 4-day weekend too, boys. The rest of the weekend, all you saw, it's amazing. Like, you probably can't even believe it that I'm saying this. All you saw, as far as the eye could see, was beautiful cheerleading college women everywhere. It was disgusting how many women there were. Yeah, I remember going to a club. I think it was called Club Razzles. I was never like really good with ladies. I didn't really get anywhere. I had one friend that actually did end up hooking up with a cheerleader, but didn't stop me from having a good time. Actually, one of the issues I had is I started to lean into drinking a lot. And that's kind of, in the Army, it's kind of a thing, you know. You kind of drink live fast and I don't know. Maybe it's how the younger soldiers do that. But anyway, I remember being at Razzles and being so drunk. They actually kicked me out because I was so drunk and just obnoxious. They kicked me out, and there's two lanes when you go to Razzles. There's the lane you're paying to get in, and the lane that you already pay to get in. And I just remember I got kicked out the side door, walked right back around, and came back in. I guess I tell that story not because I'm proud of it or not because it's a good thing to, tell about myself, but I guess I tell that just to explain where I was coming from, like growing up and having this drug and alcohol past and this just, kind of pain and being lost, not really having that discipline instilled in me, right? I was kind of wowed and, just obnoxious. And when I drank, it got a lot worse. So I didn't know I had any problems with alcohol or anything like that at that point. But anyway, yeah, Daytona Beach was a experience I'll never forget. It was absolutely glorious, and we loved it so much that we thought about going AWOL. By the end of the weekend, we were like, I don't even know if I ever want to leave. Like, I don't ever want to leave here. Like, let's just go AWOL and just stay here. But we had to go back. We knew that we had a deployment coming up. So we go back, and eventually it was time. I think it was it November? I want to say about November. Right around November, we get on a plane, and we head overseas. Now, this was my first time being on a military airplane, an AC-130. No, that was actually when we got to Germany, into Kuwait or whatever. No, this was a commercial airplane overseas. So commercial airplane overseas, and it's such a long flight. I think this is like a 12-hour flight, right? So you have to stop and refuel. We stopped in Germany, I believe, on the way there, and we stopped in Ireland on the way back. So we got a little taste of being in Europe. Didn't really even get to explore, but, just got off the plane, got to see the airport and stuff, and got to, talk to locals from different countries. So that was interesting. And then you go from there to Kuwait. Well, I just skipped NTC. I guess we got to go back. Yeah, let's go back real quick. So before any unit actually goes overseas, the Army sends units to California, Death Valley. And this is you and your unit go to this place to get acclimated to the weather, to do more drills, advanced training on top of all your training you've already done, and just to learn the mission, basically, right? So we went to NTC. That was a really crazy time. Just with my friends, with my brothers, and we're going to war, and we're just there for it. Like, let's go. We weren't afraid. We weren't we weren't afraid. We were just ready to get it done. We had each other, and at least that's how I felt. Like, I wasn't worried about it. I was ready to take care of business. I was ready to, I felt confident in all the training I've had. I felt confident in my friends. I knew that we knew what we were doing. And there's nothing to worry about. So got through NTC, and then we get on that plane, we go overseas. Now, once you get overseas, without going too deep into the military intel or whatever, once you get overseas, you go to Kuwait, and this is another stopping point, stepping stone into war, deployment. So you get to Kuwait, and you're there for a while, and then eventually we got our base, where we were going for the next 12 months. Now, to the best of my recollection, the United States Army is the only branch that does 12-month deployments. The Marines, the Air Force, and the Navy all do 6-month deployments, right? 6-month tours at a time. The Army is the only one that does 12-month or even sometime, I think, 16 or 18-month tours. So we were there for 12 months, lock in, strap in, you're not going anywhere, right? So we were at Fob Warrior. That was the forward observation base that we were at for 12 months in Kirkuk, Iraq. My unit, Green Platoon, which was my platoon over there, we did over 350 missions. Every time you get your gear on, you go to your Humvees and MRAPs. We'll show some pictures of what that looks like. Humvees and MRAPs is what we were in. Every time you go down to the line, get in your vehicles, go outside the fob, outside the wire, you go on a mission, whether it's a checkpoint, patrols, whatever it is, raids. Went on a couple raids. That was intense. So we had Captain Bruner. Back then, I think he was a lieutenant. There's just so much to tell, guys. Wow. Lieutenant Bruner, who ended up being a captain. That was our CO, or our PO? Platoon leader. PO. That was our PO. And then Sergeant Compton was our platoon sergeant. This was the guy I trained with all year long leading up to the deployment. But he had a stroke. I went on leave. You get mid-tour leave, right? You get to go home in the middle of your deployment for a couple weeks. I go home and I come back and my platoon sergeant's gone. I had no idea what the heck happened, but we got a new platoon sergeant named Sergeant Richardson. And I still talk to him this day. I'm still friends with him on Facebook. And this man is just a solid man. Very solid man. And he still is serving to this day. He's not in the Army, but he's still a veteran that supports other veterans and stands for America, right? So this is just a really solid guy. Ended up being my platoon sergeant. And I get back, and we went on over 300 some missions. Just a couple things I remember about that. I was a driver for a lot of the time. I would drive the MRAP with my commander in the next seat, tell me where to go. And then up top, the gunner, Sergeant Goki. I still talk to him. Great guy. And then 2 dismounts in the back, right? So like 5 people per vehicle. We would just go on missions. We would drive all around Iraq, different places, go to checkpoints. We would spend the night sometimes at these checkpoints. And like I was saying earlier, fire guard. This was a constant thing. You never drop your guard. There was always somebody awake. I think 2 people actually awake. And fire guard throughout the night. One thing, like a more exciting mission or whatever we went on, was a raid. We ended up, I think it was me and my friend Holiday actually ended up taking down the number 2 high-value target in that area at that time. We spotted them. We had these BOLO lists, be on the lookout, right? And we had these different terrorists we were looking for. And we spotted him this one day, and we pulled up to him. I think it was Holiday, jumped out of the truck, slapped some flex cuffs on him, and we took him down. And I think we got an award for that, or some kind of recognition for that. We went on a couple other raids. Raids were like a more intense mission, right? Because checkpoints and patrols are certain missions. Raids are like calling different units, and we're all working together. Clearing houses. We did a lot of that. You just go into the city and you park strategically wherever your commander tells you to park, and you dismount, and you're out there. You're on the street. You're looking around, head on a swivel, and then it's like, all right, that house there, boom, we're going in. Stack up. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Second guy comes around, kicks in the door, and you just go. Another thing I remember is mortar rounds. Within the first 3 days, we learned what mortar rounds are. Because I remember when we got there, the unit we were relieving was telling us about it. They're like, watch out for mortar rounds. This is what they sound like, yada, yada. And, Yeah, he wasn't joking. The whole year long, you would just hear these rockets raining from the sky. And then you would go out like the next morning and just see this big blast area where they hit. And that was just Iraqi people just launching mortar rounds throughout the night and throughout the day, just trying to hit U.S. Army soldiers. No one in my platoon got taken out. Oh, they hit the DFAC one time, I remember. They launched a mortar round, and we had this big building that we all ate in, and yeah, they hit that the one day. We also had a gym. It was a really, really nice base. Really nice base. We had a gym, a DFAC, tons of military equipment, tons of soldiers, tons of reconnaissance, everything. Didn't take any casualties from mortar rounds. Didn't have anyone get shot. IEDs were a big thing too. Our brother unit, I remember guys I went to basic with. They went to Mosul up north, and I remember hearing about them. An MRAP got taken out. They were blown up. But yeah, none of us got hit with IEDs that year or mortar rounds. The one casualty we took is something that I've talked about before. I actually ended up writing a song about it. Was our medic, right? We had a combat medic. Each platoon has a combat medic, and I was our combat medic's roommate. I leaned into the combat lifesaver position. I was into that, putting on tourniquets and giving IVs, all these kinds of things. My medic was friends with another medic named Paulie, and this guy Paulie was young just like the rest of us, but he was kind of awkward. And looking back, you could definitely tell he was struggling. And Paulie came by one morning, knocked on our door, because that was kind of a thing. You know, we'd all have our own little chews, and we'd, visit each other. Knocked on our door. I remember I had my headphones on. Me and my medic were about to go to the gym in a bit. And he knocks on the door, talks to my medic. I think he wanted to hang out or maybe go to the DFAC or something. And we decided not to go with him, right? And then the next thing I know, it was like an hour later or something, finally ready to go to the gym or wherever we were going. We go out, walk down to the right, heading wherever we're heading, and we see a couple people outside with it taped off, like a little zone taped off. We're like, wait, what's going on down here? So we go down there, and Paulie's door's open, and I look in, and another medic from our platoon or our unit was in there trying to resuscitate him, and there's blood actually the whole way out the door. Just a whole pool of blood. And Cruces went in there, and he's trying to help too. And yeah, Paulie shot himself in the head with his M9. He just we just couldn't deal with it. I think he was being harassed. This happens in the military. Everywhere you go, you got jerks. We called it hazing. I guess they put a little polite term on it to make it okay. But yeah, bullying, really. He was bullied. I think he was going through a divorce back home because women are just unfaithful. They just can't wait 12 months. So yeah, that was happening, and he just couldn't deal with it. He couldn't go home. You can't just say, hey, I changed my mind. I don't want to be here for the next 6 months. It doesn't work like that. So he found another way out, and that was to commit suicide. And I remember the iPhone coming out around this time, and Facebook. I actually downloaded Facebook for the first time in Iraq, and we'll throw up a picture. And yeah, the iPhone came out because here's what it was. We were all buying these, what are they called? iPods. Is that what it is? Yeah, iPods for music. And then one day, a fellow soldier, Nelson, who was a good friend of mine, really good soldier, really good guy, he came back with this new kind of iPod. We're like, hey, what's that, man? And he's like making a phone call on it. We're like, how are you on the phone on your music player? And he's like, this is a new thing called an iPhone. It's both. It's a phone and plays music. And that was like a game changer, right? And that's interesting to think about because I remember getting back home and I didn't want a smartphone. Like they were out. At this point, they were out. Pretty much everyone was getting one, but I was cool with my iPod. And I had a flip phone. And I was just cool with that for a long time after that. Eventually, I got a smartphone. Never an iPhone. I actually ended up going with Android. I don't support Apple. I think it's just overpriced and just not for me. But anyway, so we get home and let's try to wrap this up. When I got home from Iraq, I bought a new vehicle, my first F-150. I remember that put me back financially. I ended up not taking leave. Pretty much every soldier, when they got home from war, they went home to their family. I wasn't really homesick, and I just bought this vehicle, and yeah, I chose not to do that. I chose not to go home. This was a game changer in my life, kind of, because I always remember that my ex that I hinted at earlier, we had a rocky relationship, and this was like my high school sweetheart, and we would like be on and off for years and years. But every time I would come home on leave, we would hook up, we would get back together. And this time I remember I went 2 years. It was just too long, I guess, to ask any woman to wait. And not to mention I was just not that good of a man. Like, what was there to wait for? I get a phone call. I'm like almost out of the Army. Got a couple months left. I'm finishing my contract. Honorable discharge, coming home. Let's go. She calls me up. I'm in the field, and she tells me she's pregnant. And it just hit me. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? And she said she was going to marry him. And that just kind of changed my world. I was like, wow, okay. So it actually took me 8 years to get over this girl. It was just no closure. It was really, I felt really twisted up about it. It took me a long time, a lot of pain to get over that. But eventually I did. Coming to a close, right before I got out of the Army, I remember wanting to come home because, for a few reasons. When I first joined the Army, I actually wanted to make a career out of it. But I had other things in life that I wanted to try to do, like be a musician. That was always something that was so important to me. That was one thing going on. Another thing was my mom. She just filed for bankruptcy, and she was telling me like she was going through a lot back home. So, and then the last part of that was when I was up for re-enlistment, I wanted to become a ranger. When I got back from Iraq, I was taking it really seriously. I had, I think, the highest PT score in my battalion. I ended up being the colonel's driver. I was just really, really focused on being a ranger. I wanted to be an airborne ranger. And I was, reading the ranger handbook, doing everything I needed to do. And I remember when I was up for re-enlistment, they had nothing open at all. The war was dying down at this point. Garrison got kind of boring. And when I asked for re-enlistment, ranger was not open. So then I wanted airborne. Airborne was not open. No unit that interested me was open. And I said, what is open? And all they had was Fort Drum, New York. So basically, it would be like doing what I was already doing for another 4 years, but in New York City in the freezing cold. So at that point, I would just rather stay in Georgia, and I didn't want to stay in Georgia, so I got out. Honorably. Honorable discharge. 2012, I learned so much. I learned an incredible amount of values like honor, love of country, discipline, teamwork. Just incredible values that never left me and never will. And that's where the story ends, because this was, 2012. That's 12 years ago. It's 2024. There's a lot that's happened since then. Maybe for another video we could talk about other stuff, but that was it. That was my experience in the United States Army. And for anyone, any younger people that are thinking about joining the military, I always recommend joining the military to anyone that's interested in doing it. And it's not because of who the president is. It's not because of what war's going on at the time or not going on. It's more about not just serving your country. It's more about a one-in-a-lifetime experience with a brotherhood. American Army or American military, becoming a part of that brotherhood and going on that adventure is life-changing. You will learn so much along the way that will help you just dominate fields for the rest of your life. Whatever job you end up choosing or field you end up practicing in, you will learn values that will propel you for the rest of your life. Because excellence, Army strong, United States military excellence, at least back when I was in, was just something that we stood for.